Okay, another follow-up for this lock. The seller has been super responsive and sent out a replacement lock really quickly. I was pretty surprised with how quick it got here. Unfortunately, despite them saying that they personally checked to make sure the sliders were there before sending it, it is very obvious that they're not in here. I took a photo, but of course, somebody could remove the sliders and say they're not in there. But what I'm going to show you here is that even if there were sliders in there, there's no way this lock would work with them. And I think that the seller, maybe they just don't know a lot about locks, or they're just a reseller, and maybe they have a factory that has just been scamming them. That's what I'm hoping, at least. Not that it's a good thing. Anyways, you see there's this bar here that should interact with the sliders, and when the sliders gates line up, that bar should fall into the lineup. Here I have a Primus. It's not the same. I wish I had a Yale Superior I could show you. It would be a lot more like this lock. But here's a Primus. It has a sidebar, right? And we can see the sidebar is spring-loaded, and it drops down in there to be flush with the cylinder, so the cylinder can turn inside the lock. And that will drop down when all the gates inside are lined up with the sidebar, which they are in this case because the key is in. So that sidebar will drop down. Now for the sidebar to be able to stop the lock from turning, the cylinder has to have a corresponding slot in it. You can see that slot up top there. That's where the sidebar will be in, and it'll stop the plug from being able to rotate when it's inside there. So that sidebar is going to drop in there. When all the key is in, that sidebar will be able to drop into the plug, allowing it'll fall out of that slot, and you'll be able to turn your lock, right? So that's the principle behind how a sidebar locks a lock. Now, if we look at the original one, where I've already removed the key pins, it's nice. It does have the pin and pin, so the stuff that they've advertised. The keys, I was surprised that they are cut different from each other, so that's a really good sign. But here we have the sliders, right? Well, where the sliders should be. The sliders should go sideways. You'll note that there's no cut in this direction for a sidebar to slot into, like there would be here. Okay, there's nothing there, and so you don't even have a spot on that lock for there to be springs, right? There should be a slot, and there should be two holes here for springs to be able to push that sidebar away. And let's say they had some weird design where somehow the sidebar is on the outside and it just pokes into holes on the, it has fingers. Some of these things have like finger pins they can push in. It still needs a slot to drop out of the way of the cylinder to be able to turn. Without that, there's nothing dropping. And you might be, oh, there's a slot here. No, that's the slot. Just that doesn't even. That's the sideways slot. It's not in the right position. So there needs to be a slot there. Now, even if there was a slot there, we go over to the cylinder itself. There is no spot on the edge for a sidebar to lock the lock. So a sidebar has to be able to push it out into that cylinder in order to have something to stop the lock from turning, right? So there's nothing there to stop the lock from turning, right? So I'm showing you this one. There's nothing there. So what we can do is we'll take this to put, because I only have one of these shoes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one. It's full of graphite to lubricate it. I'll put that one back in so I can get my my shoe back. It doesn't go all the way in. I have to line it up with the actuator to get it to go all the way in. But I don't need that all the way in to take my shoe out. Now that I got my shoe, I'll show you the other one. This is the original one. So that's the replacement they sent me. Obviously didn't have, if it did have sliders, which it didn't, but if I did remove them, you could see that there was nothing for them to interact with anyways. No possible way there being a sidebar. So here's the other one. You can see again, there is no sidebar slot for it to go into. So both of these don't have a sidebar slot in the cylinder. They don't have a slot in the plug, and they didn't have sliders. They just weren't in there. I took a photo of both of them before I took it apart, and there's nothing in there. So unfortunately, the seller was very gracious and very responsive. He sent this replacement out really quick, but it didn't solve the problem. He said he checked for sliders in there. Obviously, he didn't know what he was looking for or something, because it's very clear to anybody who knows anything about locks that there are no sliders in there. And even if there were, I can show you that the sliders are not doing anything, and the advertising says they should be. So that's the follow-up to this. I don't expect any more mother-son balls here. But yeah, the other lock that I bought from another seller was a bad seller. So this is a good seller so far. So we'll see how it goes. Thanks. Bye.